but I've just got a few slides generally to just sort of highlight what is quite, I often find that it's good, yes, we can think about what works well, and that's great, but it's not going to always get us as far as if we point out what goes wrong and maybe how we can build on that. And as I mentioned this morning, Sheffield's a good place for that at the moment. So, you know, where we've got things like ambitions running high, where we've got promises that can sometimes be made and they're not delivered, and where we just, you know, if we're in kind of a situation perhaps when we're going for a funding bid, anything's possible. We'll do anything to get that money, and then the reality kind of bites. Reality really does bite. So what I just wanted to kind of think about is, and it applies to me in the university context as well, is that who do we work with and who do we work well with, and where is it possible to cut ties? Should we be doing that? And how can we just sort of do that? So this is a bit of like a kind of a diagnostic thing, and it's for you to take as many copies as you want. I've got a big box full. But yeah, we're just sort of thinking about partnerships and where you're involved in, thinking about the partnerships that you're involved in, but thinking about issues around communication, around what you're sharing. Is it resources? Is it tools? Is it decision making? Is it power? Is it money? Are the partners involved, are they all equal? And is there a willingness to possibly work differently? And I've kind of looked at different examples where, again, when it came to the funding, everybody said we'd work differently, we'll pool our resources and it'll be great and we'll share our budgets. And then of course the money comes and the council said we can't do this, or that organisation said we can't change. Again, so it's that just being realistic, but and also balancing that with what the aims are of a partnership and making sure that they're feasible, achievable, but flexible wherever that's needed. So if you want to have a flick through the handbook and take as much time as you want, and these sheets are really just here for you to kind of have a think about what's going on in your partnership, wherever it is, if it's your team that you work with, or if it's a partnership that's just starting, just kind of have a think about what it is. But the checklist, and I do apologise to any of you who see the errors, which will be that I think the page numbers are all wrong on that form, but never mind. Anyway, you'll find your way around it, I think. So this checklist is on page 11 of this, but please just leaf your way through. And yeah, it's kind of just asking you questions on this form about what are your partnership's aims. So what is it that you're all trying to achieve? Are they the same for everybody? In the ideal world, who would you have as part of you in your partnership? Who would you work with to achieve your aims? And are these aims, well, does everybody agree with them? That might sound like a really silly thing, but are they open to interpretation? Does everybody understand them when you've got them written down? Or is there some wiggle room which might make conversations interesting, but might make it difficult as well? And then we're also going to be thinking about, when we talk about who you might want to work with to achieve your aims, thinking about those, but not just locally, but right up to the national scale as well. So again, we're doing some, ideal world thinking here. So we'll work through some of those, and then just to kind of highlight that where I've got that little box at the bottom, so it's time for tiny writing at this bottom box, where you think about who your group, or kind of, if that needs to be you in a team, or your friends group, or again, whatever it might be. But on page 17 of the Partnership Handbook, we've just got this very, very lo-fi handwritten network diagram. And this was just one that we were talking about a park, and then we were trying to make the links between the friends groups, the council, and then all those other different people or groups that were involved, some of whom don't talk to one another, some of whom do. Some have strong relationships, some it's weak. So again, it's just good to have a think about that and whether there's any work or thinking about maybe what might strengthen relationships if they need to be strengthened, or just change, or more discussions, as I think we've been talking about this morning. And then there is a final box which is on the flip side of the page. Let me just check. Yeah, and this is just if we get time to go through this as we're working through. what your lines of communication are. The examples that I kind of talked about this morning, communication just keeps coming out as an issue, normally when there's a lack of communication. So it was great hearing about the park in Coventry. Oh, we do social media. I was thinking, wow, I know a lot of groups in Sheffield where they just don't do social media. During lockdown, there was no talking to one another because people didn't want Zoom in their bedrooms or in their houses, and it was just so it's very different in different contexts. But what are those lines of communications? Are they face-to-face? Are they more email-based? And I'm kind of not necessarily thinking about COVID in that way, but just how are you having those conversations and who is making the decisions? And would you consider those lines of communication to be strong or worth strengthening? So I just think I will be quiet for a little while, and you can have a kind of, a chat to the person next to you about what partnership you might want to think about or anything that this sort of brings up for you. And yeah, I will be quiet. Over to you. It might be useful for those who want to just kind of have some time to just chat through some of these things, and if there's anybody who wants a bit of advice from anybody else or just opinions of how you've dealt with perhaps a particularly tricky partnership. So I don't know if anybody wants to kind of start to just share anything that they're grappling with.
Tricky partnership.
Go for it, absolutely.
So we've been working on a lottery project in one of our parks, and as part of it, before I came, we established a friends group to help, reflect local voices and kind of share plans and kind of get their opinions on it. And I think we're now doing the evaluation for this project, and one major thing that we've learned is that we didn't set very good parameters for what those people could expect, what kind of impact they could expect to have on it.
Sounds very familiar.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So we think that in future we can learn quite a lot from that and say we will share things with you, but this is what our expectation from you guys is.
So
we'll listen to
actually,
these things, but
that kind of kick-started us looking at all of our friends groups sort of, and we're in the process of doing it and reviewing it and making sure that we have strong memorandums of understanding that are agreed on both sides with them to set those parameters and as well, and rethink what actually we want the group to achieve in our spaces, and make them rethink what really do you want to achieve as those residents in those spaces and maybe beyond as well, and coaching them and empowering them of what else their group can do, but mainly we're trying to ring fence really what their expectations can be of our organisation and what they can demand from us.
Can I ask how you actually did that in terms of, was it the types of questions that you were asking? Did you make a statement about?
We basically pulled together the memorandum of understanding. We've decided will be the framework for all of those groups. We put in place what we think that the objectives and aims are, take them to the group, ask them to review it, come back to us with any reasonable amendments, but the idea really is you need to agree to that.
you opt in or you opt out.
Yeah,
basically.
it's kind of an opt in or an opt out, and make sure that the things like your group's objectives, we have reflected them properly. But in terms of it's this is the part, this is the deal.
Did they help write it, or did you just present it?
They fed it into it. It's very it's not a really strict agreement, and it gets reviewed every year as well. So as things change, and, so we don't outline every single little bit of project that they're doing or involved in, just to try and set some of those parameters.
What was it that sort of was the impetus, the motivation?
This particular
group with some personality types, and there was. It got a bit out of hand.
Conflict,
not very nice altercations in the park,
slander.
things like that.
I found that once there was money involved, People wanted access to that money and they wanted to
That
control.
was an element of this. It's not
I
massive
think
for us.
the big problem that we have was that a lot of the people in this group had been landscape architects and things like that themselves.
Oh,
so they
so
were
they
like,
were
oh,
quite
I want to see the plans
high-professional,
because
yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
I would understand it. So we then showed them the plans, and then some of the other people were like, I don't know what this is. I don't understand this. And so they kind of wanted to have quite a lot of an impact on the design when actually we kind of knew what we wanted mostly to
And
do
learning
anyway.
like the reasons why that group was set up isn't really how we want friends groups to establish in the future. We want that to come from the people. We kind of brought that in for a project to kind of an aim of ticking a box of that project.
Yeah, fill that criteria.
Yeah.
But actually it should be the residents that want to form those groups
Yeah.
come to us to do it, and then we're here to be that kind of volunteer support for them. And also for us, we need to figure out the balance between what we who are registered volunteers, our core volunteers, and who are friends group members.
Yeah.
And then we have different responsibilities over them as well, which we needed to figure out, and in terms of like the insurance and legalities around that too, because we were having like friends groups that didn't have their own insurance that were trying to do tasks in the park. We're like, well, unless you've got a registered volunteer there that's been okayed by us to lead them, and you're not covered by any insurance. But then that's our role, is to...
Does going down the line of a written MOU not made it too weighty and formal? Has that been an issue at all in terms of it feels like it's being driven by you rather than a true partnership?
I think one group has felt a little bit, but I think that's just the historic
It's an individual within a
relationship.
group.
Yeah, I think it's a historic relationship. Actually, I think they've all welcomed it. Like, oh yeah, I think we do need to
So
really
they see it
clear
as
up
helpful for them as well.
I think we give them quite a lot of face time as well, so they know us individually quite well. So they don't feel like we're trying to pull the wool over their eyes. They think, this is actually quite a good idea.
Yeah, and we do have appointed lead members of staff for each group that like will work directly with them. So it's not just like I'm the volunteer coordinator and they just all come to me. Thank God. So the lead members of staff that they actually see out in those parks and work more closely with.
So
They
they
know to
develop
go
that
to them.
trust of that
Yeah.
individual.
Yeah.
Yeah, because if I came in as the new volunteer coordinator and tried to tell them what was now happening, that wouldn't have been received very well because I don't know half of them. Whereas we've already got staff that have really well established and they know more about what's going on with their projects and stuff. So actually, we were a bit worried about bringing in the MOUs and how they'd be received, but I think both sides have, we're still getting them agreed and signed off and reviewed, but we've also expanded that out to all partnerships.
Yes.
So we've had so many partnerships that have been brought in through different parts of the organisation that now I was like, well, first of all, we're also reviewing a policy on it. We need to be more transparent on how these partnerships come about and what due diligence we're doing on these organisations that we're partnering with. Some of them are very small volunteer organisations. And we're learning that, sometimes their volunteer policies aren't in alignment with ours. And then we need to have the board decide, or do we actually want to partner with and endorse this organisation if they don't really align with our values. So that's a new piece of work. I've got to start thinking about this policy and how to really record that decision-making process as an organisation on it's not just, especially voluntary sectors, a little bit bad for it. Chief exec used to know this person that worked at this local organisation, so we give them a bit of money or we'll help them out on different things, and you're like, well, does that really match our charitable objectives that well?
Yeah.
So we now want to make it a lot more transparent and equitable.
So thinking about that formal memorandum of understanding, is that used by other people around the table?
No, but I was just wondering whether you could circulate.
No, I was thinking that would be good to have a look at it and see
Well,
what it is
I
that
think
you're
we
doing.
probably based it off of something from NCBA.
And I was wondering if you could have like an MOU light almost, because I was thinking of John's example of a group that was consulted on the playground, but then basically none of that was listened to because it couldn't ever be listened to. So that wasn't clear from the beginning, is what you said. So
Yeah, and I think
would an MOU just be way overkill for that one-off project?
Maybe. I think, it's just how they felt deceived by... They weren't potentially lied to, but for some reason they were led to believe that they could influence the design on that area
Exactly.
from the start.